You know what they say about family? Blood is thicker than water. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes that blood can turn ice cold in a matter of seconds. My name is Delphine Hawthorne, and this Christmas, I discovered just how quickly 23 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice can evaporate over a single phone call. Let me tell you how my perfect family destroyed itself in one evening, and how I made them pay for every single dollar they thought they could steal from me. It was December 15th, a Tuesday that started like any other. I was in my home office, working on a logo design for a boutique hotel in downtown Portland, when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister-in-law, Marissa. The message was short, cold, and commanding. "Family meeting tonight, 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late." No, please, no explanation. Just a summons, like I was some employee being called into the boss's office. I should have known right then that something sinister was brewing in the perfect suburban paradise that had become my brother's life. I remember staring at that text for a full minute, my coffee growing cold in my hands. In 5 years of family dinners, holiday gatherings, and weekend visits, we had never once had a family meeting. We talked things through over dinner, during car rides, while the kids played in the backyard. Formal meetings were for business, not family. But I went. Of course I went, because that's what I always did. I dropped everything, rearranged my schedule, and showed up whenever my family needed me. It's what I had been doing my entire life, and what I foolishly thought made me valuable to them. The drive to Camden's house took 22 minutes through the winding suburban streets of Beaverton, Oregon. I had made this drive countless times over the past 5 years, usually loaded down with groceries for family dinners, or craft supplies for the kids' projects, or tools to help with whatever home improvement crisis they were facing that week. Their house sat on a perfectly manicured half-acre lot, a sprawling 2-story colonial with white shutters, and a wrap-around porch that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I had helped them move into this house 3 years ago, spending an entire weekend painting trim and hanging fixtures while they supervised from the kitchen, sipping wine and discussing their vision for each room. That night, the warm yellow light spilling from the windows looked different somehow, colder, more distant, like the house itself was preparing to reject me. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key, though I'm not sure why. Maybe some part of me already sensed that my unlimited access to their lives was about to be revoked. Camden answered the door, and immediately I knew something was terribly wrong. My older brother, the man who had taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies in elementary school, couldn't meet my eyes. His usual easy smile was nowhere to be found, replaced by an expression that looked almost guilty. "Hey, Del," he said, using the childhood nickname that usually made me feel warm and included. Tonight it sounded forced, like he was trying to maintain normalcy while preparing to detonate a bomb. "Come on in. Everyone's in the living room." Everyone. The word hit me like a physical blow. Everyone was there except me, which meant they had been meeting about me, planning something that involved me but didn't include me. My stomach dropped as I followed Camden through the entryway I had helped tile last spring. The living room felt smaller than usual, despite being large enough to hold 2 couches, a love seat, and an oversized coffee table. Marissa sat on the main couch, her arms crossed and her expression set in that stubborn line I had learned to recognize over the years. Flanking her were my parents, Eleanor and Richard Hawthorne, who had driven up from their retirement community in Sarasota specifically for this meeting. The fact that my parents were here, having made a 6-hour drive without mentioning it to me, told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been planned and how serious they considered it to be. "Delphine, honey," my mother said, her voice carrying that overly gentle tone she used when she was about to deliver devastating news. "Come sit down. We need to have a conversation." There was only one chair available, a single armchair facing the couch like I was about to be interrogated, or tried. I sat down slowly, my heart starting to race as I looked around at these 4 people who had shaped my entire life, and realized I was looking at strangers. My father cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses. a nervous habit he'd had since I was a child. Delphine, we've been talking as a family, and we think it's time for some changes in our family dynamic. Changes, I repeated, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. What kind of changes? Marissa leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her knee in an impatient rhythm. She had always been direct, sometimes brutally so, but there was something different in her expression tonight, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Look, Delphine, I know this might be hard to hear, but we've made a decision about Christmas this year. We think it should be immediate family only. You know, parents and their children, nuclear families, the way it's supposed to be. The words hit me like a physical slap. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. Nuclear families? The way it's supposed to be? What was I if not family? Nuclear family only, I managed to say. Camden is my brother. You're all my family. Well, yes, technically, Marissa continued, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when explaining basic concepts to her 5-year-old son. But you're 31 and single. And frankly, it's becoming awkward for everyone. Every year, it's the same uncomfortable questions about when you're going to settle down, find someone, start your own family. It makes the holidays tense. I looked at Camden, waiting for him to jump in, to defend me like he always had when we were kids. Instead, he stared at his hands, nodding slowly like Marissa was making perfect sense. She has a point, Del, he said without looking up. Maybe it would be better if you started your own traditions, found your own path, built your own nuclear family unit. My own nuclear family unit? I stood up, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. What exactly do you think I've been doing for the past decade? I've been working 60-hour weeks building my graphic design business from nothing. I bought my own house, I pay my own bills, I take care of myself. But because I don't have a husband and children, I'm suddenly not worthy of being included in family celebrations. My mother spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. Honey, we're not saying you're not worthy. We're just saying that maybe it's time for you to focus on creating your own family. Marissa and Camden have their boys to think about, and having their unmarried aunt around all the time might be sending the wrong message about priorities. Wrong message about priorities. I felt my face getting hot, that familiar flush that happened when I was trying not to cry in front of people. What message is that exactly? That women can be successful and independent? That you don't need a man to validate your existence? That family members support each other unconditionally? Don't be dramatic. Marissa sighed, waving her hand dismissively. We're just saying that Christmas should be about traditional family values. Children need to see what a real family looks like. They need examples of stable nuclear units, not alternatives. The word alternatives hung in the air like a toxic cloud. That's what I was to them now. Not a beloved daughter and sister and aunt, but an alternative lifestyle that might confuse their precious children. Traditional family values, I repeated slowly, tasting the bitterness of the words. Like the traditional value of loyalty? Or maybe the traditional value of not abandoning family members because they don't fit your perfect picture. My father cleared his throat again, louder this time. Delphine, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We're not abandoning you, we're just adjusting expectations. You can still visit throughout the year, of course. We'll still have our regular relationship, but the holidays should be for parents and their children. That's just how these things work. I felt something crack inside my chest, a sharp break, like ice splitting on a frozen lake. I see. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. For 23 years, I've been part of this family. I've shown up for every birthday, every graduation, every soccer game, every crisis. I've helped you move houses. I've babysat your children. I've listened to your problems. I've provided emotional support and financial help whenever any of you needed it. But now, because I don't have the right relationship status, I'm being voted off the island. It's not personal, Marissa said. But her tone suggested it was very personal indeed. It's just that we want Christmas to be special for the boys. And having someone there who doesn't really fit the family structure, doesn't really fit. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. After 3 decades of believing I belonged somewhere, I was being told I didn't fit. I looked around the room one more time, at these people who had defined my entire sense of self and belonging, and saw them clearly for perhaps the first time in my life. I saw my mother, who had taught me to be accommodating and selfless. My father, who had taught me to avoid conflict at all costs. My brother, who had learned to choose the path of least resistance over standing up for what was right. And Marisa, who had never seen me as anything more than a convenient resource to be used when beneficial and discarded when inconvenient. "You know what?" I said, grabbing my purse and heading for the door. "You're absolutely right. I don't fit your perfect nuclear family picture, and frankly, I'm starting to think that's a good thing." I paused at the front door, my hand on the handle, and turned back to face them one last time. "But here's the thing about not fitting in your family structure. It means I'm not bound by your family loyalties either. And you might want to think about what that means for all the things I've done for you over the years. All the money I've lent you, all the free work I've provided, all the favors I've done out of love and family obligation." The color drained from Camden's face. "Del, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that family relationships come with certain expectations and protections. But business relationships, those come with contracts and payment schedules and legal obligations. You just told me I'm not family anymore. So I guess we need to figure out what kind of relationship we do have." I walked out before any of them could respond, closing the door firmly behind me and walking to my car with as much dignity as I could muster. It wasn't until I was 3 blocks away that I pulled over and screamed until my throat was raw. 23 years of being the devoted daughter, the helpful sister, the loving aunt, and it all meant nothing because I didn't have the right accessories to complete their family portrait. But as I sat there in the dark, something else began to bloom alongside the hurt. Something that felt dangerous and powerful and completely justified. They wanted to know what not belonging felt like. They wanted to treat me like a business transaction instead of a family member. I was about to show them exactly what that meant. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a pot of coffee, and a burning need for answers. Not emotional answers about why my family had rejected me, but concrete, numerical answers about exactly what that rejection was going to cost them. The morning light was filtering through my kitchen windows when I finally finished what I was calling the reckoning spreadsheet. It was beautiful in its cold precision, a masterpiece of documentation that laid out 5 years of one-sided generosity in brutal detail. Let me tell you about the favors I had done for my loving family, the people who had just decided I didn't belong at their dinner table. The babysitting alone was staggering. I had kept meticulous records in my phone calendar because I'm the type of person who tracks everything. Every Friday night for 2 years when Camden and Marisa wanted their date nights. Every weekend when they flew off to couples retreats and romantic getaways. Every school holiday when they needed someone to watch 8-year-old Marcus and 6-year-old Finn while they attended work conferences or social events. At $15 an hour, which was below market rate for experienced childcare in our area, that came to $8,400 in unpaid babysitting services. Then there were the house projects. I had documented these too, because I always took before and after photos of my work for my professional portfolio, even when the client was family. 3 weekends last spring, helping them renovate their kitchen, doing all the detailed painting and trim work myself, because I actually knew what I was doing. A week the previous summer installing new light fixtures throughout their house. 2 weekends building custom shelving for their basement playroom. Professional contractors would have charged at least $4,000 for the kitchen work alone, another $1,500 for the electrical work, and $2,000 for the custom carpentry. That was $7,500 in unpaid home improvement labor. But the graphic design work I had done for free was perhaps the most insulting line item of all. Marissa's boutique clothing business, Threads and Dreams, had needed a complete rebrand 2 years ago. She had come to me in tears, explaining that her business was struggling and she couldn't afford to hire a professional design firm. I had created everything: logo design, business cards, brochures, website graphics, social media templates, packaging design, even the signage for her storefront. I had worked nights and weekends for 3 months, treating her project with the same attention and care I gave my paying clients. A rebrand package like that would normally cost $15,000 minimum. I had given it to her for free because that's what family does for each other. All told, the unpaid services came to nearly $30,000. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the loan. 3 years ago, Camden's construction business had hit a rough patch. A major client had defaulted on payment, leaving Camden unable to make payroll or cover his equipment loans. He and Marisa were behind on their mortgage, facing foreclosure on the dream house they had bought just 18 months earlier. I remember the night they came to me, both of them crying, begging for help. They were going to lose everything, they said. The boys would have to change schools. Their perfect suburban dream would be shattered. Camden looked at me with those puppy dog eyes that had gotten him out of trouble since we were kids and said, "I need $30,000, Dell. I know it's a lot, but I'll pay you back as soon as the business recovers, I promise." I had liquidated my entire emergency fund and taken out a personal loan against my house to give them the money. Not lend, give. Because Camden was my brother, and family takes care of family, and I couldn't bear to see him lose everything. The business had recovered. More than recovered, actually. Camden now employed 12 people and drove a brand new Ford F-150 that cost more than most people's cars. Marisa had closed her boutique to become a full-time social media influencer, posting pictures of her perfectly curated life to her 15,000 followers. They took vacations to Hawaii and Napa Valley. Marisa got Botox injections every 4 months and had just spent $3,000 on Christmas decorations alone, but not a single dollar had found its way back to me. I pulled up my text messages with Camden from that time period, screenshotting the conversations where he had called it a loan, where he had promised repeatedly to pay me back as soon as he could. "You're saving our lives, Dell. I don't know how we'll ever repay you. As soon as this contract comes through, you'll get your money back with interest, I promise. You're the best sister in the world. I'll never forget this." But apparently he had forgotten. They all had. My phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. Camden's name flashed on the screen, and for a brief, pathetic moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe he had realized how wrong they had all been. Maybe he was calling to apologize and beg me to come back. "Hey, Dell." His voice was careful, cautious, like he was talking to someone who might explode at any moment. "Listen, I know last night was rough, but I wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay." "I'm fine, Camden," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Just doing some year-end accounting, reviewing my financial records, calculating what's owed to me, that sort of thing." There was a pause. "What do you mean, what's owed to you?" "Oh, just the usual end-of-year business stuff. You know how it is when you run your own company. You have to track all your outstanding invoices, unpaid loans, services rendered without compensation. I'm actually quite surprised by some of the numbers I'm seeing." Another pause, longer this time. "Dell, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about $30,000 in unpaid loans, Camden. I'm talking about thousands of dollars in free professional services. I'm talking about years of unpaid labor that I provided out of what I mistakenly thought was family loyalty." "Mistakenly thought?" "Dell, we are family. You're my sister." "Am I?" "Because last night your wife made it very clear that I'm not actually family. I'm just some single woman who doesn't fit your nuclear family structure. Which means all those things I did for you weren't family favors, were they? They were business transactions. And business transactions typically involve payment." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "Look, I know Marisa came on a little strong last night, but you have to understand her position. She's trying to create the perfect environment for the boys, and she thinks, having what, Camden? Having a successful, independent woman around might corrupt your children. Having someone who chose career over marriage might give them dangerous ideas about women's roles in society. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you all decided that my life choices make me unfit for family inclusion, which raises some interesting questions about all the financial support I've provided over the years. The money you gave us was a gift, Del. You said so yourself. Actually, if you check your text messages from August 2021, you'll see that you specifically called it a loan, multiple times. You promised to pay me back with interest as soon as your business recovered. Would you like me to forward you the screenshots? The line went quiet. I could practically hear his brain scrambling to find an angle, a way to reframe this situation that didn't make him look like the ungrateful user he was turning out to be. Del, please. You're scaring me. This doesn't sound like you. You're right, I said, getting up to refill my coffee cup. The old me would have accepted being excluded from Christmas dinner and gone home to cry about it. The old me would have prioritized keeping the peace over standing up for herself. But you know what? The old me apparently doesn't belong at your dinner table. So you're dealing with the new me now. What does that mean? It means I'm done being taken for granted. It means I'm done being the family member who gives everything and asks for nothing in return. It means I'm done accepting whatever scraps of affection you're willing to throw my way while you simultaneously exclude me from the real family. But we're not excluding you from the real family, aren't you? Because it sure felt like exclusion when you told me I couldn't come to Christmas dinner. It felt like exclusion when you said I don't fit your family structure. It felt like exclusion when you made it clear that my life choices make me an inappropriate influence on your children. Camden was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was small and defeated. What do you want, Del? I want what's owed to me. $58,000 according to my calculations. $30,000 for the loan you've never repaid, plus 3 years of reasonable interest. $15,000 for the graphic design package I created for Marissa's business. $8,000 for babysitting services. $4,000 for home improvement labor, plus documentation fees and the time I've spent calculating all of this. We don't have that kind of money. Funny, you seem to have money for new trucks and cosmetic procedures and expensive vacations. You had money for $3,000 worth of Christmas decorations. But you don't have money to pay back your sister who kept you from losing your house. That's different. Those are things we need, things that make our lives better. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. And paying your debts doesn't make your life better? Treating your family members with respect and gratitude doesn't improve your quality of life? Del, please. You're being unreasonable. Nobody charges their family members for helping out. You're absolutely right, Camden. Family members don't charge each other for helping out. But you just finished explaining to me that I'm not really family, remember? I'm just some single woman who doesn't fit your perfect picture. Which means I was providing professional services to clients, not helping family. And clients pay for services. I could hear Marissa's voice in the background, sharp and panicked, though I couldn't make out the words. Look, Camden said, can we talk about this in person, tonight? Just the three of us. I don't think that's a good idea, Camden. I think any further discussions should involve my lawyer. Your lawyer? His voice cracked. Del, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. You want to treat this like a business relationship? Then we're going to handle it like a business relationship. Professional, legal, by the book. But we're family. No, Camden. You made it very clear last night that we're not family. So now we get to see what the alternative looks like. I hung up before he could respond, and immediately felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. For the first time since that horrible meeting, I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the author, and it was time to write a different ending. I had an appointment with my lawyer in 2 hours. It was time to find out exactly what my family's love was worth in dollars and cents. Patricia Kellerman's law office occupied the entire 3rd floor of a sleek building in downtown Portland, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the Willamette River. I had been using Patricia for my business contracts for 3 years, and she was exactly the kind of woman I aspired to be. Sharp, successful, and completely comfortable wielding her power. "Delphine," she said as her assistant showed me into her office, "you sounded upset on the phone. Please sit down and tell me what's going on." I had prepared for this meeting the way I prepared for all my important business presentations. I had organized all my documentation in a leather portfolio with labeled tabs and section dividers. Bank statements, text message screenshots, email chains, photos of my work on their house, receipts for materials I had purchased for their projects. Everything was chronological, cross-referenced, and highlighted for easy reference. "Patricia," I said, settling into one of the leather chairs across from her mahogany desk, "I need to know my legal options for collecting on some significant debts." She raised an eyebrow. "Business debts? I thought your clients were pretty good about paying promptly." "Not business debts. Family debts." I explained the entire situation, watching her expression grow more incredulous with each detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and whistled softly. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said. "Your family has essentially fired you from Christmas because you're single, but they've kept all the financial benefits of your relationship? That's about the size of it. And you have documentation for all of this?" I opened my portfolio and began laying out the evidence. Text messages where Camden acknowledged the $30,000 debt and promised repayment. Email chains discussing the graphic design project for Marissa's business, including her effusive thanks and promises that she would make it up to me somehow. Photos showing the before and after of my work on their house, with timestamps proving when the work was completed. Bank statements showing the money transfers and the personal loan I had taken out to help them. Patricia examined each piece of evidence with the thoroughness of a prosecutor building a case, which, in a way, was exactly what we were doing. "This is actually quite impressive," she said after reviewing everything. "Most family disputes fall apart because nobody documents anything. They rely on trust and verbal agreements. But you've been treating these transactions with professional rigor, even though they were family arrangements. I document everything in my business life. I guess the habit carried over. Lucky for you it did. The loan is rock solid. You have written acknowledgement of the debt and promises of repayment. The graphic design work is well documented with a clear scope of services and market rate valuations. Even the babysitting and home improvement work can be substantiated." She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "The unpaid labor is trickier to quantify legally, but it's not impossible, especially when you can demonstrate market rates for comparable services. And the loan portion is absolutely enforceable. What are my options? Well, you could start with a formal demand letter, lay out the full scope of what's owed, provide supporting documentation, and give them 30 days to respond with either payment or a reasonable payment plan. And if they don't respond?" Patricia's smile was sharp and predatory. "Then we file in small claims court. The maximum claim in Oregon is $10,000, so you'd have to break this into multiple suits. But the documentation you have would make these very winnable cases." "How long would that take?" "Small claims moves pretty quickly. We could probably have hearings scheduled within 60 days of filing. And here's the beautiful part about small claims court. It's designed for exactly these kinds of disputes. Judges see family financial disagreements all the time, and they don't have much patience for people who borrow money and then try to claim it was a gift when called on it." I felt something warm and dangerous expanding in my chest. What about the emotional aspect? The fact that they excluded me from Christmas? That's harder to address legally, but it's excellent context for why you're seeking repayment now. You can argue that the family relationship that previously made you willing to overlook the debts has been fundamentally altered by their actions. It shows that you're not being vindictive. You're simply adjusting your financial relationships to match the personal relationship they've chosen to establish. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes bright with professional interest. "You know what I love about this case, Delphine? They think family loyalty is a one-way street. They think they can take everything you offer while giving nothing back, and you'll just accept it because that's what family does. But family loyalty is a contract, and they just broke it. So what's our first step? We draft a comprehensive demand letter. Professional, unemotional, thoroughly documented. We lay out exactly what's owed and why, provide copies of all supporting evidence, and give them a reasonable time frame to respond. Then we wait to see how they handle it. She pulled out her calendar. I can have this drafted and ready for your review by tomorrow afternoon. How do you want to deliver it? I want to hand deliver it myself. I want to see their faces when they realize I'm serious about this. Even better, the personal delivery makes it clear that this isn't some impulsive emotional reaction. This is a calculated business decision. As I drove home from Patricia's office, I felt lighter than I had in days. Not because the problem was solved, but because I finally had a plan. For the first time since that awful family meeting, I wasn't just reacting to their decisions. I was making my own. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I blocked my family's phone numbers, not permanently, but temporarily. I needed space to think without having to field their attempts to manipulate me back into compliance. I needed to approach this situation like the business problem it had become, not the emotional crisis they wanted it to remain. By Thursday afternoon, Patricia had the demand letter ready. It was a masterpiece of legal precision, professional, thorough, and absolutely devastating in its cold recitation of facts. The cover letter explained that I was seeking repayment of outstanding debts now that our family relationship had been redefined. The attached documentation packet included 37 pages of evidence supporting every claim. Remember, Patricia said as she handed me the sealed envelope, this isn't about revenge. This is about establishing appropriate boundaries and ensuring that your generosity isn't taken advantage of in the future. And if they want to negotiate, then we negotiate, but not from a position of weakness. You hold all the cards here, Delphine. They borrowed money they haven't repaid. They received services they haven't compensated, and they have no legal leg to stand on. The only leverage they have is emotional manipulation, and that only works if you let it. Friday morning, I drove to Camden and Marissa's house for what I knew would be the last time as a family member. From now on, any visits would be business meetings. The difference felt profound, like crossing a border into a foreign country where I didn't speak the language. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key. When Marissa answered, she looked terrible, pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "Del," she said, her voice small and uncertain. "I've been trying to call you." "I know. I needed some time to think without interference. I have something for you." I handed her the envelope, watching her face as she recognized the law firm's letterhead. "What is this?" "It's a comprehensive accounting of our business relationship. Since we're no longer family, I thought it was important to clarify any outstanding financial obligations." Her hands were shaking as she took the envelope. "Del, please, can we just talk about this? Woman to woman? I think all our communication should go through my lawyer from now on. You have 30 days to review the documentation and respond with either payment or a reasonable payment plan." "But this is crazy. You can't charge us for family stuff." I looked at her. This woman who had lived in the house my money had helped save, who had built her business with my free labor, who had enjoyed countless nights out while I watched her children for free and felt nothing but cold contempt. "You're absolutely right, Marissa. I couldn't charge family for helping out, but you made it very clear that I'm not family. So now we get to see what the business relationship version looks like." "We didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did. You meant it exactly like that. You wanted me out of your perfect nuclear family, and now you have what you wanted. Congratulations." I turned to walk back to my car, then paused and looked back at her. "Oh, and Marissa, you might want to call your insurance company and let them know you won't have free babysitting anymore. I believe most policies require professional childcare providers to be licensed and bonded. Just something to think about." The drive home was the most satisfying 22 minutes of my entire life. The call came exactly 6 days later, just after I had finished my morning coffee and settled in to work on a rebranding project for a local restaurant chain. Camden's name flashed on my phone screen, which surprised me since I had blocked their numbers. Then I realized he was calling from his work phone. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 3 minutes of pure panic. Del, please call me back. We got your lawyer's letter and we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Marissa's been crying for days. The boys keep asking why Aunt Delphine isn't coming for Christmas. Please, can we just sit down and work this out like family? Like family. The phrase that had once made me feel warm and included now sounded like a manipulation tactic. I called Patricia first. They received the demand letter, I told her. Camden left a voicemail asking to work this out like family. Predictable. They're hoping they can emotional manipulate you back into compliance. What do you want to do? I want to meet with them, but on my terms. In your office, with you present, treating this like the business negotiation it is. I like that approach. It establishes that this isn't a family reconciliation. It's a debt collection matter. I'll call them and set it up. The meeting was scheduled for that Friday evening at 6 o'clock. I arrived early and spent a few minutes in Patricia's office reviewing our strategy. We had agreed that I would let her do most of the talking initially, establishing the professional nature of the discussion and preventing them from turning it into an emotional family drama. Camden and Marissa arrived at exactly 6, both of them looking like they were attending a funeral. Camden wore his best suit, the navy one he reserved for meeting with his biggest clients, and Marissa had on her most conservative dress with her hair pulled back in a severe bun. They meant business, but they also looked terrified. Good. Patricia greeted them with cool professionalism, offering coffee they declined, and gestured for everyone to sit around the conference table. The demand letter and supporting documentation were spread out between us like evidence in a trial. Before we begin, Patricia said, I want to make it clear that we're here to discuss the repayment of legitimate debts. My client has documentation supporting every claim, and we're hoping to reach an amicable settlement without involving the courts. Camden shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look, I'll be honest. We don't have $58,000 sitting in our checking account. The business is doing well, but we have overhead, employees, our own expenses. I understand that, I said, speaking for the first time since they'd arrived, which is why I'm open to discussing a payment plan. But let's be clear about what we're discussing here. This isn't a negotiation about whether the money is owed. The documentation is unambiguous on that point. This is a discussion about how you're going to pay it back. Marissa leaned forward, her eyes red and puffy from what had clearly been days of crying. Del, I know you're angry with us, and maybe you have a right to be, but this feels like you're trying to punish us financially for a personal disagreement. A personal disagreement? I repeated, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. Is that what you're calling it? You excluded me from Christmas dinner, told me I don't fit your family structure, and made it clear that my life choices make me an inappropriate influence on your children. That's not a disagreement, Marissa. That's a rejection. We didn't mean it that way, Camden protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, you did. You meant it exactly that way, and it made me realize something important. I've been enabling this relationship for years. I taught you that my love was unconditional and my resources were unlimited. I taught you that you could take everything I offered while giving nothing back, except the privilege of being included in your lives. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening darkness. But here's what I've learned this week. When that inclusion becomes conditional on my conforming to your vision of what my life should look like, it's not inclusion at all. It's tolerance. And I'm done being tolerated by my own family. Patricia made a note on her legal pad. The emotional aspects aside, let's focus on the financial obligations. Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield, are you prepared to acknowledge the debts outlined in our demand letter? Camden ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from childhood when he was trying to solve a problem he couldn't think his way out of. The $30,000, yes, Del lent us money when the business was struggling, but we always thought of it as, we never intended for it to be a formal loan with payment schedules and interest. Psyched. But you did acknowledge it as a loan in your text messages, Patricia pointed out, sliding several printed screenshots across the table. Multiple times. You promised repayment as soon as the business recovered. Would you say the business has recovered? Marissa and Camden exchanged glances. Their financial situation was obvious to anyone who looked. The expensive cars, the frequent vacations, the constant home improvements, the designer clothes Marissa posted on her Instagram account. Yes, Camden admitted quietly. The business has recovered. It's actually doing better than ever. And yet no payments have been made toward this debt? We kept meaning to. There were always other expenses. We thought Dell understood. What I understood, I said, turning back from the window, was that family takes care of family. What I didn't understand was that apparently that obligation only flows in one direction. Patricia pulled out another document. What about the graphic design services provided to Mrs. Thornfield's business? Do you acknowledge receiving those services? Marissa nodded miserably. Yes, Dell did amazing work for Threads and Dreams. The whole rebrand, the website, everything. It's probably why the business was as successful as it was before I closed it. And what compensation was provided for these services? None. But Dell offered to do it for free. I never asked her to work for nothing. I laughed. But there was no humor in it. You came to me crying about how you couldn't afford to hire a professional designer. You said your business was failing and you needed help. I spent 3 months working nights and weekends to create a complete brand identity for you, and you never once suggested paying me for my time. Because you're family. Family doesn't charge family for helping out. That's exactly right, Marissa. Family doesn't charge family. But we've already established that I'm not really family, haven't we? I'm just some single woman who doesn't fit your nuclear family structure. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic on the street below. Patricia shuffled through her papers, giving everyone a moment to absorb the weight of what had been said. Let's talk about solutions, she said finally. The total amount owed is $58,000. Are you prepared to make any payment tonight? Camden and Marissa looked at each other again, having one of those silent, married conversations that happen in glances and micro-expressions. We could maybe do $15,000, Camden said finally. That would pretty much clean out our savings, but we could manage it. $15,000 toward a $58,000 debt, Patricia noted. What about the remaining $43,000? We'd need time. Maybe we could do $2,000 a month? I did the math quickly. That's 21 months to pay off the balance, almost 2 years, with no interest. Dell, please, Marissa said, reaching across the table toward me. We're trying to work with you here. We're trying to make this right. I pulled my hands back from her reach. Are you? Because it sounds like you're trying to minimize your financial obligation while doing nothing to address the real issue. What real issue? Camden asked. The real issue is that you don't think you did anything wrong. You think this is all about money, but the money is just a symptom. The real problem is that you convinced yourselves it was okay to exclude me from the family while still expecting me to provide financial and emotional support. We never excluded you from the family, Marissa protested weakly. You excluded me from Christmas dinner because my life doesn't match your perfect picture. You told me I don't belong in your nuclear family structure. You made it clear that my presence makes you uncomfortable because I'm single. How is that not exclusion? But we still love you, Camden said, his voice breaking slightly. You're still my sister. Am I? Because sisters don't get disinvited from Christmas dinner. Sisters don't get told they don't fit the family structure. Sisters don't get excluded because their life choices might confuse the children. I stood up again, pacing to the other side of the room. Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 options and you need to choose tonight. What are the options? Camden asked quietly. Option 1. You pay me the full $58,000 you owe me. We can work out a reasonable payment plan, but it needs to include interest on the loan portion since it's been outstanding for 3 years. We settle the financial obligations. We go our separate ways. And you can have your perfect nuclear family Christmas without the inconvenience of including me. What's option 2? Marissa whispered. Option 2 is much more complicated. You acknowledge that what you did was wrong. You genuinely apologize for excluding me from Christmas and for making me feel like my life choices make me unworthy of family inclusion. You invite me back into the family as an equal member, not as someone you tolerate when it's convenient, and you still pay back the money you owe me because debts don't disappear just because you say you're sorry. What would that look like exactly? Camden asked. It would look like you paying back the money on a schedule we can all agree on. It would look like you explicitly inviting me to Christmas dinner and acknowledging publicly that I'm a valued member of this family. It would look like you never again making family decisions about my inclusion without talking to me first. And it would look like you understanding that family relationships require mutual respect, not just one person giving everything while the others take whatever they want. Patricia was taking notes throughout this exchange, and I could see the approval in her expression. We had discussed this strategy beforehand. Give them a choice between a purely financial resolution and a comprehensive solution that addressed both the money and the relationship. And if we choose option 2, but then things don't work out, if we have problems again in the future, then we address them like adults, with honest communication and mutual respect. But understand this, I'm not the same person I was a week ago. I'm not going to be the family member who accepts whatever scraps of affection you're willing to give me. I know my worth now, and I'm not going to settle for less than I deserve. Marissa was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Del. I really am. I think I got caught up in this idea of what Christmas should look like, and I lost sight of what really matters. What really matters? Family. Real family. The people who show up for you no matter what, who support you unconditionally, who love you for who you are instead of trying to change you into who they want you to be. I studied her face, looking for sincerity, for genuine understanding of what she had done. What I saw was regret, embarrassment, and what appeared to be real remorse. And Camden, what do you think? My brother looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy who used to defend me from bullies on the playground. I think I was a coward. I think I let Marissa convince me that excluding you was somehow better for our family, when what it really did was break our family. And I think I've been taking advantage of your generosity for years without acknowledging what it meant or what it cost you. So what are you choosing? Camden and Marissa looked at each other for a long moment, having another one of those silent conversations. Finally, Camden turned back to me. We choose option 2. We want to fix this, all of it. We want you back in our lives, and we want to do it right this time. That means paying back the money. Yes, all of it, with interest on the loan portion, like you said. And it means changes in how you treat me going forward. Yes, real changes, permanent changes. I felt something shift inside my chest, a small crack in the wall of hurt and anger I had built around my heart over the past week. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the possibility of forgiveness. Patricia, can you draft a payment agreement that includes the terms we've discussed? Absolutely. I can have it ready by Monday morning. I turned back to my brother and sister-in-law. I need you to understand something. This isn't me being vindictive or trying to punish you. This is me establishing boundaries and protecting myself from being taken advantage of in the future. Family relationships require trust, and trust has to be rebuilt slowly. We understand, Marissa said. And Del, thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance to make this right. As we left Patricia's office, I felt cautiously hopeful for the first time in a week. Not because the problem was solved. It would take months to pay back the money and years to rebuild the trust that had been broken. But because for the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself with my family and refused to accept being treated as less than I was worth. 3 days later, Camden called me on my personal phone. The payment agreement is signed, he said. Patricia said she'll send you a copy for your records. The first payment will be in your account by the end of the week. Good. And Christmas. You're invited, officially, enthusiastically invited. The boys have been asking about you non-stop, and I realized that Christmas really won't be Christmas without you there. I'll think about it, I said, though I had already decided I would go. Del? Yeah, I'm proud of you, for standing up to us, for demanding better, for not just accepting our apology and letting us off the hook. You taught us something important about what family really means. What's that? That love without respect is just sentiment, and that real family members fight for each other even when it's hard. Christmas morning, I woke up in my own house and made myself breakfast while my coffee brewed. At 10 o'clock, I loaded my car with presents for the boys and drove to Camden and Marissa's house, where a place had been set for me at the head of the table, and my nephews were wearing the sweaters I had knitted for them months ago. It wasn't the same as it had been before. I wasn't the same as I had been before. But sometimes, the most valuable gift you can give yourself is the knowledge that you're worth fighting for, even when the fight is with the people you love most. Especially then. The first payment arrived in my account right on schedule, along with a handwritten note from Camden. Thank you for teaching us what family really means. We're sorry it took almost losing you to learn it. I kept the note, but I also kept the payment schedule. Because love without respect is just sentiment, and I had learned the difference between being loved and being valued. This Christmas taught me something profound. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to demand the love you deserve, even from family, especially from family. And sometimes the people who claim you don't belong are really just afraid of what it means that you don't need them to define your worth. I belonged at that Christmas table not because they finally invited me back, but because I had learned to belong to myself first. And that made all the difference in the world.